Welcome. Today I am going to model the lesson Some of the Parts. It is a lesson in which students learn about human impact on watersheds.
What does the teacher need to do to prepare before conducting the lesson?
The teacher will need to obtain a large poster-sized piece of white paper for each class, tape and a set of markers for each group of students. It also helps to have resources for students on common sources of point and non-point source pollution, as well as ways to manage these types of pollution.
Okay, I have my materials. What do I do next?
Next, they need to decide how they are going to divide their students up into groups. I usually make groups of 3 or 4. You want to have an even amount of groups in each class. My class sizes usually gave me 6 or 8 groups.
Most of my classes would have 8 groups. Is there anything else I would need to do to prepare?
Yes, you now need to take each piece of large white paper and draw a river down the center of the paper and color it in blue. Then divide the paper into 8 sections if you have 8 groups, or 6 sections if you have 6 groups. The paper should be divided down the middle through the river so that you have a 2x4 table.
How will I remember which piece goes where when I try to put the river back together?
It helps to number the back of each piece of paper before you cut them apart so that it is easy to put back together in the correct order. Each group will receive a piece of this paper so that it is divided up among the class. Do not tell students they have a piece of a whole.
How long does this lesson usually take?
I usually completed this in one 50-minute class period. It may take longer depending on how long you give students to brainstorm.
Great. I've got it. What happens now?
Let's start the lesson. I will model the role of the teacher. You will model the role of a student.
Okay, let's do it.
You have just inherited $1 million and some riverfront property. The white paper you have represents this property. You can see the river drawn along one side. You are going to use your money to develop this property. You can build whatever you want. You could build a strip mall, a farm, a resort, a subdivision, a mine, or even a theme park. It is up to you and your group of 4 to decide what you want to build and draw it on your paper.
I can really build whatever I want?
Yes, it is up to you and your group to decide what you want to build on your property.
What fun. Okay, I am done. I have drawn my development.
Now, each group will come up to the board and we will tape your river property to the board. Your group needs to describe what you have built.
Well, my group decided to build a farm in a small subdivision. Our farm has pigs and horses that people can ride around the area on. The subdivision has 5 houses and a park. It also has a pier going into the water so people can't fish and swim. Here's the road the cars drive on to get in and out of the subdivision.
Fantastic. Now, it's the next group's turn. We are going to tape your group's paper underneath the first group so that the river has both sides. Then as the other groups come up, we will tape them on the board, adding them to the river.
So, all of our developments are on the same river?
Exactly. Now, I am going to hand out a resource to the class on common sources of point and non-point pollution. I want your group to brainstorm all of the possible ways your development may be polluting the river.
Wow, we are polluting the river quite a bit.
Now each group will come up to the board and share how their development is polluting the river.
Our development is polluting the river in multiple ways. First of all, our farm is polluting the river with animal wastes. The wastes from the pigs and the horses may be washed into the river or seep into the ground and enter through groundwater. Our farm also uses fertilizers that are washed into the river. Other animal waste that enters the river includes dog waste from people walking their dogs by the river or from backyards in the subdivision that are not picked up immediately. Oil from the cars also gets washed into the river along with lawn fertilizers. Cleaning products from people washing their cars and anything else outside pollutes the river. Pesticides that people use to kill ants or prevent bugs from entering their houses or to kill the fleas in their yard also get washed into the river. Sometimes people also dump waste down the sewers that wash right into the river. And that is just the start of it.
You identified a lot of the pollutants your development is putting into the river. I am glad you brought up dog waste. There was a local dog park on the river that had to be closed because the E. coli levels got too high due to the dog waste polluting the water. Here are some items to represent the pollution your development is putting into the river. When the next group comes up, hand them the items representing your pollution. This represents the pollution going downriver. The next group also receives items to represent their pollution and passes this on to the next group. What do you think will happen by the time it gets to the last group?
They will have a lot of items, meaning a lot of pollution. But what if the last group built a resort with people swimming in the river? Wouldn't they be swimming in the pollution from my development?
Exactly. Now, go back to your groups and use the resources on ways to prevent pollution as well as your own ideas to come up with ways to prevent or limit the pollution your development puts into the river. Let's take some time to hear what each group has come up with on how to prevent their development from polluting the river.
Our group thought of lots of ways we could limit the amount of pollution our development puts into the river. First, we thought that we could have a law for our subdivision that says everyone has to pick up their dog poop immediately, as well as a campaign to encourage people to follow this law. Or we could start a business that cleans up dog poop for a low cost. We also thought that we could encourage the use of cleaners for cars that don't harm the environment, as well as non-harmful pesticides such as buying nematodes for flea reduction. We will stop using pesticides and fertilizers on our farm and use organic methods to farm that won't pollute the river. We are also going to manage the waste of our pigs and horses so that it does not enter the river. We think we want to construct some sort of barrier to prevent oil from washing off the roads and driveways into the river, but we need to do more research on that to figure it out.
It sounds like you have started to figure out some ways to reduce your development's pollution. Why do we care about the pollution your development is putting into the river?
The pollution negatively affects the environment. It could harm organisms living in the river or people using the river for recreational purposes. The wastes from the animals can cause E. coli, and the fertilizers put too much nitrogen into the river, increasing algae production, which can upset the equilibrium of the river ecosystem.
Why shouldn't we excuse the pollution of our development by saying, "Oh, my development only pollutes a little bit"?
Well, all of the pollution adds up to a lot as you go down the river, and each development not only pollutes a little turns into a lot. Even though the river washes the pollution away from your development, it washes it to someone else's downstream. And we are probably downstream from someone else who might think the same thing.
Ah, I understand what you are saying. The pollution accumulates into a big problem. Is there anything else you would like to add that you have learned today?
We also discovered that antibacterial soaps are a problem.
How is that?
Well, when you use antibacterial soaps, they go down the sink. Water treatment plants can't remove it. They eventually enter the river because nothing can break down the antibacterial agents, and the chemicals cause harm to the ecosystems there. They're harmful to algae that are the producers for the river ecosystem. Some of the chemicals also build up in fish and enter our food supply.
Interesting. I had not thought about where the antibacterial soaps that go down the sink end up. Now, I would like each student to write 2 paragraphs about what we have done today. You should 1. Include what you built on your property. 2. How your property pollutes the river. 3. Your plan for your property in order to limit the pollution it puts into the river. And 4. Why this is important. Your paragraphs are your ticket to leave today.
Here is what I wrote.
That brings us to the end of this modeled lesson. Do you have any questions?
Have you ever actually done this lesson with students?
Why, yes, multiple times. I have refined it over the years.
How did you assess their learning?
That is a great question. The individual student essays are a good formative assessment to see what each student has learned. It is also important to give students some questions similar in nature to the state test to see if they can transfer their learning to those types of questions as well. This could be the warm-up for the next day.
I see. Well, thank you for modeling this lesson for me today.
It's no problem. Let me know how it works for you and your students. I would love to hear your ideas or alterations after you try it.